There's more happening above your head than you think. Storms, claims, contractors who talk a big game. Eaves and Ridges is the show that cuts through it. Roofing, HVAC, plumbing, tree service, and everything else that keeps a home standing strong. Real stories, real pros, real answers. No sales pitch. This is Eaves and Ridges. And now, your host, Steve Pike.
Welcome to the Eaves and Ridges, What's Under Your Roof podcast. I'm Steve Pike. I'm your host. I own SETX Roofing Pros, and we are in the SETX Roofing Pros studios right now. We built this studio so that we could bring this kind of content to you. And today I have a wonderful first guest. Our first guest is Cody Green. He's a licensed insurance agent, a licensed insurance adjuster. He's been in roofing for 30 years. He knows about roofing, and I am proud to tell you that he joined SETX Roofing Pros a year ago, and in March we made some rearrangements to our staff. Cody took on the sales manager role, and he is really killing it there. He is a great leader. He is a great mentor for the rest of our staff, and he is my right hand, and I will tell you, I am so happy to have you on the show. Cody Green.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks for
Glad
having
you're
me.
here. As we go in to talk about the rest of the show, what is a roofer's job in an insurance claim process?
So we can be there, look at a roof. Sometimes there's roof damage, and sometimes a homeowner does need to file a claim. And there's situations where it is not what you need to do. Not all situations require to file a claim, right? And I think there is so much gray area when it comes to insurance and roofing and where we stand. And I think overall what our job is to do is the insurance company they're going to do an adjustment. And from there, they're either going to pay or they're not going to. We have a document signed that allows us to work with the insurance company. We are not policyholders, so we cannot thing on behalf of a customer because our contract is not with the insurance company as a policyholder. It is strictly to assist a customer in the replacement of their roof. We have a process, and we go through that process, and we work with the insurance company to do that. There are a lot of bad companies out there that take advantage of that situation. We are not that company. We want to make them whole, just as an insurance company is supposed to be a part of that process to make them whole as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that was explained to me many years ago was that our job is to speak to the technical requirements. We need to know what the code is. We need to know what the build needs to look like.
Yes.
And so that's where I feel like most of our guidance comes from is what is it going to take to put you to pre-loss condition? Sure. And we can talk about that as the experts in the build, but not anything about the policy or the coverage or any of that. We can ask about what your deductible is because you may need to have some payment options for that.
Yes.
Maybe you didn't buy such a great policy. Your deductible just went up to 4%.
Right.
And you don't have $20,000 to pay for a $17,000 roof.
That's exactly right. And to speak further on that, especially with the part about building codes, we've run into issues where we look at an adjustment and we're putting together our estimate. And one of the things that we do is we go through every line item on that adjustment. A story to back that up is April 1st in Jefferson County, it became a requirement to have double underlayment underneath your shingles. The adjustment came from the insurance company for this specific homeowner, and it's not going to happen like this every time. We're all human insurance companies, and they make mistakes too. And so specifically this homeowner, their adjustment did not include double underlayment. And this is the code for Jefferson County, which means that to pass the windstorm inspection from the engineer, it has to have double underlayment. We're not going to question it, right? It's a part of our process. We put double underlayment on the roof. And after the fact, we went to the insurance company and brought it to their attention that they did not submit their adjustment with double underlayment. There was no kickback. It was, oh, yeah, I don't see it in our system. Do you have when this code went into effect? Yes, April 1st, 2026. Can you send us that information? Yes, we can. And this is a part of a process that we do every single time, is reviewing these items, making sure that everything is there that's supposed to be there from a building code enforcement perspective, and building out and doing the roof the way it's supposed to be, and addressing the insurance company, giving them everything they need, timestamp photos of the installation, the windstorm code itself showing that the double underlayment. Sometimes these insurance companies don't have their systems updated to reflect the code. A lot of the times adjusters that work for the insurance companies, they come from out of state. They're not always local people. They don't know. They have a broad view of the way things are done, and it's not done the same way in all jurisdictions. That is one of the things that we do, is we're going to put the roof on the way that it's supposed to be. Our job is to make sure that the insurance company pays for that after your deductible. That is actually the most anecdotal, evidence that I can give for what we do during the process working with insurance.
Yeah, that's great stuff. We're going to go ahead and move on into the next segment, and we'll talk more about how you got into roofing. So, Cody, thank you for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely.
So, listen, what got you into roofing in the first place?
So I got my first job around the age of 13 doing home construction. Had a distant cousin whose dad and uncle and grandfather owned a roofing company, and hanging out with him a lot, just kind of transitioned into hanging out to, well, he was working, and he kind of pulled me in as a way to hang out with him, but also while he was working. And I would start off cleaning up the ground, and then it went from there to carrying bundles of shingles on the roof to eventually nailing shingles, and then just kind of going through the whole process from the lowest man on the job to now the highest man on the job. And I had kind of seen the industry myself growing up. My dad is a roofer. He's still a roofer to this day. So I've always been around it. And I've actually had other jobs, and roofing was always there, either on the side or as a primary.
Okay, man, that's pretty interesting. So you've been roofing then been in the roofing business or around the roofing business for the last 30 years.
Yes.
Man, that's pretty impressive. So I think they call that a veteran.
Yeah. Veteran.
Yeah, a veteran in the industry. And when you came to SETX Roofing Pros a little over a year ago, so congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
So describe the difference between our sales methodology when you got here and how that's evolved as you've taken over the sales manager position.
Sure. So came in as a salesman, started off having knowledge in roofing, but there's always a difference between being an installer and then being a professional that works firsthand with customers. And I've worked for other companies, and the sales processes look different across all different companies. And so you can have a product and have a process and know the industry, but to communicate that to a customer, a homeowner, it's very different from each company. Specifically, what the difference here is we have a process, and it's very thorough. And that's what makes it different from every other company that I've ever worked for. And as a manager, going through that process, I have a very clear understanding of each person, how they explain things to customers, and some have more technical knowledge and some have more communication skills. And so the difference is I have to take not the way that I did it, but manage how they would do it and how they communicate to homeowners.
Okay. So what do you find the biggest challenges in the sales process and training your sales team? What is the maybe one of your biggest challenges to make sure that your sales reps are representing the company the way that we require?
So the biggest challenge is that when we talk about our core values, trustworthiness, character, transparency, these are non-negotiable, right? And so I'd say the biggest challenge is training the guys to have a conversation on the front end that we're not here to compare ourselves to the other contractors. We have a way that we do things, and there's going to be lots of differences. Products, warranties, we're going to be different in price. One of the things that I actually take a lot of pride in is that I understand that business has been done a certain way for so long, where we think that shingles and roofing is a commodity, and that every roofer that shows up to your house is going to give you an estimate and they're going to give you a bid to complete the job, and that across the board these are all the same, and that the only difference is the numbers. The only difference is not the numbers, because what makes roofing not a commodity is how we do what we do and what happens after the project is finished. And so the biggest challenge is not to just teach the guys how to install a roof, the technical aspects of it, or to just give numbers. The biggest challenge is to take what we do, the value, the quality of work that we do, our trustworthiness, communication, and explaining that with their own personality to a customer, a homeowner, that there is a difference between those companies, and more or less to, this is why our roofs cost this much, but this is everything that is involved. It is not the same across the board.
All right, man, that's good. So thank you for sharing that with us. And as we're sitting here in the SETX Roofing Pros studios,
Yes.
right? And everybody knows that I own SETX Roofing Pros.
Yes, sir.
I would really like to know why you chose SETX Roofing Pros specifically over because you could work for anyone. You're a very talented guy. You could work anywhere
Appreciate
you
that.
wanted to work.
Yes, sir.
So why here?
That's a great question. And so I actually had this conversation yesterday with somebody else, and I've worked for a lot of different people. I've worked closely with CEOs and business owners and different industries. And I've never truly worked for someone who actually cared not only about my professional goals, but my personal goals. And that's actually something that we do, which holds us accountable, personal, professional, financially. All these things that everybody has goals, and not everybody puts them on paper. Sometimes we just kind of go through life, and we all have the desires to be better. And the difference here is that we're held accountable to not just saying we want to be better, but being held accountable to being better. And so the meetings that we have twice a month, where we sit down and we say, hey, where are you in your goals? Are you still chasing to play in a band, or did you finish that book that you wanted to read? And so the conversation I had with one of my friends the other day was, you should really reach out to Steve. He had some questions about some management type stuff, and I said, hey, look, you need to reach out to Steve, because what he gives us on the other end of the opposite side of the roofing as a mentor is priceless compared to what we even make as far as the money that we get from this job. And I will admit, I had no idea that's what I was going to be doing when I reached out to you and inquired about the job. So And I can honestly say that it has been way different than any experience I've ever had.
Wow, I'm not paying him to say that, y'all.
No,
Really,
no.
I'm humbled by that. And I think about all of the companies I've worked for in my life, and I think about all of the different things that were missing. And I didn't need to work someplace that had the Google with the ping pong tables and the nap pods and all
Yeah.
of that. I wasn't looking for that, but I was looking for fulfillment in all areas of my life. So as we started building this company, and you were my first hire, right?
Yes.
Man, I think about the growth that I've seen in you professionally and personally. You've started taking care of your health. You've started pursuing a hobby, your music hobby more, your relationships at home, your
Yeah.
family life. I see you
Reading books.
reading books. Books are so important, and I've never been a huge reader until the last few years.
Right.
And reading these books is it just changes everything.
Right.
And it helps me to understand the things that we're missing. So I try to offer those to you and the rest
Right.
of the team. And I'm glad that you recognize it. And so right now, I think the next thing is your tagline is you're teaching our sales team to earn trust, not just one job. So,
Right.
so how does that happen?
I know that it first comes down to, again, those core values of the company and trustworthiness and being transparent. And one of the things that is huge is communication throughout the whole process. And then because our company is so finely tuned and all of us work so closely together, when there's something that isn't going the way that it's supposed to go, there is always someone there to say, that's not how that works. That's not how we do that. This is what we're supposed to do. Okay, I can give you an example. Had an issue, customer had a request for something in a mix up during a project, didn't happen the way it was supposed to. Customer reached out to our sales rep. The rep immediately contacted me. I got with Patrick, our project manager, and we immediately hopped in the truck, went to the project, talked with the homeowner, and just reassured him that it was something that we had promised and that there weren't going to be any conversations other than, you're right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that everything that you ask for is what you're going to get. And there's never any question about that, right? And it's the time and time again, I say this, our job is to earn your 5-star review. We want everything to go perfect. And realistically, everything's not going to go perfect. But I think it's how we overcome and adapt during those situations is what makes our company what it is. And that's what makes us trustworthy. And that's just it. We're not going to go out there. We're not just going to give you a bid to change your roof. We talk about everything. We communicate everything. And in the end, whether there is roadblocks, we're going to earn every bit of that perfect review. We're going to earn it.
Yeah, for sure. And I can think of one in particular where we had to redeck a house. And during the process of redecking, one of the guys stepped through the ceiling,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Stepped through the ceiling and damaged the homeowner's ceiling.
Yeah.
And the homeowner was ready for a fight.
That's right.
And look, I get it. Ready for a fight. You just stepped through my ceiling. What are you going to do about it?
Right. And if I can expand on that, I
Yeah.
think that is because of the stigma that comes with dealing with our type of industry. And that is, a lot of the times there are guys that would have said, "Oh, I'm sorry," put the roof on, maybe weaseled their way into getting a payment and then disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, I promise I'm going to take care of it. And I think that's where the trustworthiness comes in, right?
Yeah. And I just want to finish the story. And so that happened late that afternoon. The next morning, we had a drywaller
Yep.
go in and repair the ceiling. And I will tell you, I've seen a lot of this over the years. And It was the master bedroom, and it was like a 15 by 20
Right.
bedroom. And you can't just go in and replace the drywall and try to texture it up and then just throw some white paint on it because
Yeah.
it's white ceiling paint.
I don't look good.
It doesn't look good. It will never match, and it will be a reminder every night they go to bed and every morning when they get up, they'll look at that spot on the ceiling. And so we painted the entire ceiling. We repaired the drywall. We matched the texture and painted the entire ceiling.
Yes.
And the customer gave us a 5-star review. They didn't have to fight to get things done right.
That's right.
We made a mistake.
Right.
And we owned it. We resolved it. And so I think that's going to bring up what are some of the things that would be a red flag in your mind that you would want when you're hiring a contractor to do work at your house, and I know you've done that, and you're actually in the middle of a remodel.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you look for in a contractor that our viewers would want to know that would be a red flag to you as somebody that's kind of an insider in the business? What are those red flags that you're looking for that might prevent you from going with someone? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really
Okay.
know how else to phrase
Yeah.
the question.
So I think that one of the things in particular is, especially in regard to the residential side of roofing, and not even just roofing, well-established companies have the ability to pay for material and pay for labor to get your project done. I'd be very wary, especially on the residential side, of any company that would ask for money up front, right? So there are some companies out there that ask for a 50% deposit or a 35% deposit. And I do understand that in some cases that this is done to cover cost. If there's, and then again, that just comes back to the trustworthiness. If I'm going to ask you to trust me as your contractor roofer, I'm also going to trust you that when the job's complete, you're going to pay what you owe. So I think that would be one thing. I'd be very cognizant of any installer of any product or any construction industry, tile, interior construction, any type of exterior work, of any contractor that doesn't know their products, doesn't understand the codes, doesn't understand how do these products stand up during storms or code requirements. If an inspector comes through, will this even pass, right? And so I think building codes, if you can ask questions about building codes and you don't have a legitimate answer, I would be aware of that too.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think just expanding on that just a little bit, when I love the idea of what I've said for a long time in this business is, if your contractor doesn't have the credit or the capital
That's right.
to buy the material and pay for the labor, then they might be in the wrong business.
Right.
And that's bold, right?
It is.
But I stand by that today. And there are some jobs that may indeed require some kind of down payment, but usually those would be after a portion of the scope of work is completed.
Yes.
And where milestones were clearly laid out in the contract. So when we reach this milestone, we will expect 30%. Right.
Right. In regard to that, we're talking jobs that could take a month or 2 months, right?
Right.
Which in some cases you do see, especially on commercial projects. And residential side, you may see that with a large build out.
Right.
But you typically wouldn't see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Small instances.
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned something about, will it stand up to a storm?
Yes.
So, man, we're right in the middle of hurricane season.
Yes, we are.
Just last week, we had a near miss. Tropical storm developed in the Gulf over near Florida and looked like it was going to come right here. And we were very fortunate and it stayed south of us. So, but I noticed on Facebook, on my favorite weatherman, and I'll drop his name later, but on his post, man, people were concerned, and I was too. And as a roofing company owner, you might think, oh, I know you're just sitting around waiting for the next hurricane to come through, but I'm going to tell you, I do not want a major
No, we
storm
don't.
to come through here. And the reason why is it throws off the business cycle for a decade.
It does.
So somebody's going to make a lot of money right now. And that's why storm chasers are popular, where they just go wherever the storms are. And we're not that. We're a local company. We're going to be here down the stretch and provide service to our customers and provide service to our communities. We're going to be in a position to be first responders when the storms are
Yes.
past. But we don't want those storms. I would rather, a lot of you have roofs that were put on after Hurricane Rita or Hurricane Ike. So that's 20, 21 years old. Those roofs are aging out. And I want you to replace those when you need to replace those. And
Right.
many of you, that time is now. We see a lot of them.
Right.
And the time is now. But from a storm prep perspective, and we talked about this a little bit before, what are some misconceptions about being prepared for a storm?
Misconceptions are, hey, my roof's not leaking. I don't have any problems, so I'm not, therefore I should be okay. And so there's a multitude. So what the saying is, deferred maintenance is what causes damage, right? So there's a process to preparing for a storm, not just for your roof, but in general for your overall house, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like to use ready.gov. They've got some great suggestions. Hit ready.gov, find out about getting Ziploc baggies for your important paperwork,
Yeah.
how to store things in elevated areas, because it's not it's not just flooding, but if your roof gets damaged, if it's already compromised and it gets damaged in a storm, how are you going to protect the contents of
Yeah.
your home or your property? And the things that are most valuable to you, make sure that you put them in some kind of waterproof container.
Right.
And then another thing that I think about is window coverings, covering windows and doors
Yes.
with plywood or some other material. And there's several materials out there on the market. And so there's that. There's, when was the last time you had somebody look at your roof? And does it make sense to have someone look at your roof in advance of a storm to kind of know the age and condition? Will it withstand a storm? Is it one of those Rita or Ike roofs that might already be compromised even though they're not leaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of things that you have to be aware of. Is one of the things that we do that I feel is special to how we do things during our process. We don't just inspect the roof, right? So we take pictures and we essentially bring the roof down to you so you can see things. And the benefit of that, especially when preparing for a storm, is I've seen it where a customer has wind damage and they call the insurance company, the adjuster comes out and they says, oh, that's existing damage. So we're not necessarily looking for damage. Sometimes we're looking for the absence of damage. In our report, we provide time-stamped photos that show, no, sir, Mr. Adjuster, if you can look right here at this photo that I took pre-storm, you can see that this area of the roof wasn't damaged before. This is not existing damage. This is something that was caused by the storm. And furthermore, let's just say that you do have a missing shingle or a missing tab on your roof. A lot of the times we think this is not going to affect anything. When it comes to wind is looking for, it's obviously it's not looking for it, but it's going to find the weakest part of the roof. And then once the lift happens, it can cause a chain reaction because our house, all the systems act together. Your soffit, fascia, your flashing, ventilation, all of these things. And when one system fails, it can start a chain reaction for all the systems to fail.
Yeah. So an example of that would be, so you've got, I'll use the common term that most consumers are familiar with, the whirlybird or
Yes.
the turbine, right?
Whirlybird.
Turbine, turbine, whatever, right? Tomato.
That's right.
But So the whirlybird gets knocked off and grabs a shingle, right? And it may hang on for a little while,
Right.
but then that shingle rips, and then now we've got half a dozen shingles that are ripped, and the underlayment got beat up by the turbine slapping up against it. Now the
Right.
wind gets under. Then you've got plywood exposed, and then you've got sheetrock and attic insulation all over your sofa.
Yeah. A small repair to something can be a smaller amount, a small price to pay now that could turn into thousands later by just putting it off.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the one thing that I like to remind people is knowledge is power, and knowing the age and condition, knowing what problems may be there, weighing the risk of those.
Yeah.
And then what does it cost to repair it or replace it now versus the potential damage that could be done from a storm, even though insurance is going to cover it. Sometimes insurance will slow pay. They will fight all the way
Absolutely.
through the process. And so, Cody, one thing that you didn't mention is that you have an insurance background.
Yes, I've
You were
over
an
a
insurance-
decade.
Yeah, so you were an insurance agent, and you have a view into this that I don't have, right? That from an insurance perspective, when somebody gets an insurance policy, that's a nice term for this is a contract between me and the insurance carrier, and we both have obligations.
That's right.
And
As long as the language states that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we actually run into. I'm just gonna wait it out till after storm season. And part of that preparedness for a storm is actually making sure that you have the right insurance policy in place for your home. And you have to distinguish what policies pay what and how they pay it. You need to review deductibles. And I can tell you 100% of the time, the wrong time to review your insurance policies are not when a storm is in the Gulf, right? And we don't want to get into the weeds about what policies are better than others, but I always just recommend before hurricane season or a part of your preparedness plan, call your insurance agent, have a conversation, and give them some hypotheticals. Hey, look, as my policy stands right now, if a hurricane were to blow through, knock a tree on my house or blow my roof off, am I covered? And that's
Yeah.
the simplest way to put it. And if something does happen, how much is coming out of my pocket?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And I'm glad you mentioned that, but that we could get in the weeds. And I don't want to get in the weeds on this episode,
Yeah.
but that reminds me of something that we could dedicate an episode to as we're recording and planning, is to have a current insurance agent, insurance broker
Absolutely.
come in and talk about the different kinds of policies and what questions would he want his customers to ask him about the policies that he writes or she. And so I think about that all the time, and I shop my insurance every couple of years.
Yeah.
And I have 2 or 3 agents that I work with on different things. And so I will go through and I'll shop them, keep them honest. And
That's it. You got to.
one story I'll tell about that still blows my mind. It's been about 5 years ago. And I was talking with a customer that had legitimate insurable loss on his home, on his roof. And his roof was at that time was about a $17,000 or $18,000 roof. And he had a $3,500 deductible. Right? He had a great deductible for his property. And his brother-in-law was his agent.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he didn't want to file a claim and have his brother-in-law be penalized.
Right.
And the relationship was worth the additional 15 grand or whatever. And I'm going to tell you, if you're my brother-in-law and you're writing my insurance, I'm filing the claim, right?
Yeah, it sounds like that's a heck of a dynamic there to
Yeah.
have there, where an insurance agent is collecting premium and has enough of a relationship to not have somebody use their policy.
Yeah, because there's some, and Cody, I'm not going to ask you for any inside information.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that what I know is that there are insurance agents that are paid bonuses on their overall book of business versus what the claims are against that book of business.
Yeah,
And
claims persistency is what it's called.
yeah, so if you think that anyway, another show, another episode
Absolutely,
for sure. And something that I would like to ask somebody that's actively running an insurance business. And so that'll be a great show. And
So far, so good.
yeah, it's great. So,
Do you want to do that? How Cody's team decides, or what happens immediately after a storm? I really like that. It's a great question. It's just like what happens immediately after a storm. I think preparing people for.
well, hang on. So, all right. So, what should our viewers do if we do get a storm? What should they do as soon as they come home if they've evacuated, or as soon as it's safe to get outside? What should they do?
First, I think, and I can't stress this enough, don't attempt to just climb on top of your roof and assess the damage yourself, right? I think it's always good to call your insurance agent and immediately file a claim. And another thing is to not hire the first roofing company that knocks on your door. We hear stories from people who, they did a house on the block, and so they did all 10 houses. And what you find is they use builder grade materials. Their warranties stopped as soon as the guy got to the end of the road, right? You had
That tail light warranty.
tail light warranty. And we've even had situations where roofs were being replaced within 10 years because the contractor, especially a storm chaser, this is what they do. They buy material in bulk, and sometimes they buy material that was rejected on a quality standpoint from a manufacturer, and they got the material at a really cheap price. And the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, generally is. And so same scenario, you need to validate companies and the work that they've done in the past. Go with local companies that are going to be around, because I can tell you, especially with local companies, and I've done this every time. I'm born and raised in the Golden Triangle, Southeast Texas. I have been here my whole life. And one of the things and this isn't just it may not always, so every storm that we've ever had, there have been times when we have evacuated, there have been times when we haven't. Either way, I am always here the day after a storm, one way or another, and we're ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready. And we may be knocking on your door. I feel that is a way to serve our community. I feel that is one way to protect our community from the people who make this industry look bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to say that if you have a canvasser or a door knocker,
Yeah, absolutely.
that makes a company non-credible.
Right.
In a storm situation, it is important that maybe your neighbor hasn't seen this podcast, or maybe your neighbor hasn't heard our ads that we have on the radio or seen on TV, those kinds of things. I think just making sure that, because I believe in what our company does.
Right.
I believe in it. And if they use a storm chaser because we didn't knock on their door, then I feel like I'm a little bit accountable for that.
Yeah.
Because I know that we're going to take care of them. And there are a handful of top-notch contractors in
Right
the
here.
Golden Triangle.
Right here in this area.
There are a
Yeah.
handful. I'm not going to name them. I'm actually considering having each one of them come and be a guest on the
Yes.
show, so that they can hear that, so that our audience can hear that there are some consistencies
Yes.
among
Yes.
real legitimate contractors. And roofing in Texas, there's no license for roofing.
Yes.
There's no barrier to entry. You could get, so look, here's a career tip for our audience. You could quit your job today, whatever it is you do, and you could go down to Home Depot, buy a bundle of shingles, a ladder, and a hammer, and go down to FedEx and have a magnetic sign printed and call yourself a roofing company. Sounds crazy, but you could do that. You could go knock on doors and after a storm, and you can make a ton of money.
And Steve, there are people that do that.
There are people that do that.
And they give you bids for
Yeah.
your roof that, or they can dress it up and make it sound pretty and good, and they have no clue what they're doing.
Yeah. So verify your contractor. Do they have an online presence?
Yes.
A digital presence in 2026 is so important. There is no reason that a legitimate contractor shouldn't have a quality website, a Google business profile, a Google reviews, Facebook page, all of the different places that people go. I'm on Facebook and I'm in all these groups for my community, and every day somebody's asking for a roofer, right? Or a plumber or an HVAC. If they don't have a legitimate presence in the community, then man, be careful. Just remember red flags. And as we're coming to a close, you were going to say something, so I'll let you say that, and then
I was
come back
just going
to
to
the
say
close.
that anybody that watches this or has worked with us in the past, that anybody that refers us to someone else or any other situation, we're really always going to work hard to be an extension of that person. Whether we've done work for you or we haven't done work for you, you can trust that that you can recommend or refer us to somebody, and we're going to do our best to make you look good for your solution to whatever your person's problem was, right? So, yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a closing question,
Okay.
and that's, if it were your own house and you were interviewing a contractor to do anything for you, what is one thing that as a homeowner is a non-negotiable for them to answer? And I didn't give you a preview of this question.
No, you didn't give me a preview. I almost wish you had, but
Yeah.
what is one thing as far as a non-negotiable?
That if they can't do that, you're not going with them.
Communication.
Communication.
Yeah, I want to know everything that's going on, and then communication and transparency.
So how do they prove that on the front end? So you're interviewing them. So I love where you're going, but I want to
Sure.
flesh it out a little bit. Okay. How can they prove that they're going to have good communication? How can they prove that they're transparent?
Sure. The only way I can answer is in how we do business
Okay.
as a company. You're going to hear from us multiple times before we even show up at your door.
Okay.
That's going to be through email and text. We're going to call you. We're going to talk to you. So even if you reach out to SETX Roofing Pros and you schedule an appointment for us to come out, one of our guys is going to call you, and he's going to ask you questions. Wants to know what's going on with your project. What can we look forward to when we show up to do an inspection? And we're probably going to contact you about 4 times
Okay.
on the way before we get to your house. To me, that
Okay.
is communication. We have a clear understanding of what we're looking for when we get there. We're letting you know when we're on our way. You know who your sales rep is. And so to me, that's part of it. And I've been on the other side of it. I've had contractors at my house. I've had contractors tell me they were on their way and they weren't. Or even in past, before even being a part of this here, I've had, or not customers, but being a customer, I was told a specific product was going to be used and wasn't. And afterward, finding out that there was a legitimate reason why it was being used, it just wasn't communicated to me. And that can actually put me on the defense on the front end, right? And then that just makes it weird for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. And that's going to be the closing question for everybody that comes on the show. So thank you for being the guinea pig. But yeah, I hope those examples help the audience. And what I'd like to ask everybody to do while we're getting ready to close up is go down and subscribe, follow, share, send it to a friend, all of those good things. Comment, let us know about what content you would like for us to cover in a future episode. And this is the Eaves and Ridges What's Under Your Roof podcast. I'm Steve Pike. We're in the SETX Roofing Pros studios. I'd like to thank Cody Green, our guest, he's our sales manager here. And thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
I enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Absolutely.
And audience,
Looking forward
please.
to coming back.
Yeah, man, you'll be back in a little while. We've got there's 6 of us. I'm going to do 6 staff segments. And, oh, that reminds me, next week, check this out, y'all. We have our production manager, Patrick Ramb, is going to be sitting in Cody's chair.
Yeah.
And Patrick has been a builder for more than 30 years. He knows how to build a building and the entire envelope that goes around a house. And you're going to find out what are some things that happen after you decide to go with your contractor, specifically us. If you go with us, with SETX Roofing Pros, you're going to find out exactly what happens step by step. So that communication that Cody was talking about is super clear. You're going to get notified when the material's ordered, when the job is scheduled. He's going to talk to you about all of those different things. And then all the way up to the build completion and then where his handoff is. So that's going to be super important for you to watch. I hope I teased you enough without giving you too much. But anyway, next week on the Eaves and Ridges What's Under Your Roof podcast is going to be Patrick Ramb, our production manager. Thanks.